Namaste. Myself, JVN Dr. K.K. Chaudhary, Department of Science and Technology, Faculty of Education and Methodology, JAYOTI VIDYAPEETH, Women University, Jaipur. Today we will discuss about the session number 1.3, protein digestion and absorption of the subject Animal Physiology and Endocrinology, course BSc B.Ed, JVWU, 4th semester. We have already discussed about the physiology of digestion and absorption of the carbohydrates. After then, the next step comes to the what happens with the proteins. When you eat the food, the body digestive enzymes break down dietary proteins into individual amino acids, which are absorbed and used by the cells to build other proteins and a few other macromolecules such as DNA. Let us follow the path that protein take down the gastrointestinal tract into the circulatory system. Eggs are the good dietary source of the proteins and will be used as our example as we discuss the process of digestion and absorption of the proteins. One egg, whether raw or hard-boiled, scrambled or fried, supply about 6 grams of the protein. Now we will discuss that what happens to our egg at each site of the digestion. First, the protein digestion in the mouth. Unless you are eating it raw, the first step in digesting an egg or any other solid food is chewing. The teeth begin the mechanical breakdown of the large size food particles into the smaller size food particles that can be swallowed. Salivary glands secrete saliva to aid swallowing and passage of the partially mashed egg through the esophagus. In the mouth, there is no secretion of the protein digesting enzymes, so there is no digestion of the proteins take place into the mouth. After, when the food is swallowed, it enters into the stomach. Then what happens into the stomach? The mashed food particles enter the stomach from the esophagus. In the esophagus, then there is both, it enter into the stomach, and in stomach both mechanical and chemical digestion take place. The stomach release the gastric juice, just hydrochloric acid, containing hydrochloric acid and the enzyme Pepsin, which initiate the chemical digestion of the proteins. Muscular contraction called peristalsis also help in the digestion. The powerful stomach contraction churn the partially digested proteins into a more uniform mixture which is called chyme. Because the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, it is very low pH, 1.5 to 3.5. The acidity of stomach causes food proteins to denature, unfolding their three-dimensional structure to reveal just the polypeptide chain. This is the first step of chemical digestion of the proteins. Recall that three-dimensional structure of protein is essential to its function. So, denaturation in the stomach also destroys the protein function. This is why a protein such as insulin cannot be taken as an oral medication. Because if you take the proteins into the oral medicine, it is destroyed by the HCl into the stomach. Its function be destroyed in the digestive tract. First by denaturation and then by the enzymatic digestion. Instead, it to be injected so that it is absorbed directly into the bloodstream. Once the protein is denatured in the stomach, the peptide bonds linking amino acids together are more accessible for enzymatic digestion. That process is started by the pepsin. So, the pepsin is the first enzyme which attacks on the protein, which start the digestion of the proteins. The pepsin is an enzyme that is secreted by the cells that lines the stomach and is activated by the hydrochloric acid. Pepsin is secreted in the form of the propepsin, a pepsinogen. When it comes in contact with the HCl, it is converted into the active form, that is the pepsin. And the pepsin start to break peptide bonds, creating shorter polypeptides. The proteins are the large globular molecules and their chemical breakdown requires time and mixing. Protein digestion in the stomach take a longer time than carbohydrate digestion, but a shorter time than fat digestion. Eating a high protein meal increase the amount of time required to sufficiently break down the meal in the stomach. Food remains in the stomach longer, making you feel full longer. So, this is the digestion and absorption into the stomach. In stomach, there is no absorption of any type of food take place. Now, the food enter into the small intestine. The chyme leave the stomach and enter the small intestine, where the majority of the protein digestion occurs. The pancreas secrete the digestive enzymes, their digestive juices, into the small intestine, and these contain more enzymes to further break down polypeptides. The two major pancreatic enzymes that digest proteins in the small intestine are chymotrypsin and the trypsin. Trypsin activate other protein digesting enzymes called proteases, and together these enzymes break proteins down to tripeptides, dipeptides and individual amino acids. The cells that line the small intestine release additional enzymes that also contribute to the enzymatic digestion of polypeptides. Tripeptides, dipeptides and single amino acids enter the enterocytes of the small intestine using active transport system, which requires the ATP. The cells that line the small intestine release additional enzymes that also contribute to the enzymatic digestion of polypeptides. Tripeptides, dipeptides and single amino acid enter the enterocyte of the small intestine using active transport system, which requires ATP. यानी कि ATP active transport means requirement of the energy and movement of the substance against the concentration gradient. Once inside, the tripeptide and dipeptides are broken down to single amino acid, which are absorbed into the bloodstream. There are several different type of transport system to accommodate different type of amino acids. Amino acids with structural similarity ending up competing to use these transporters. There are several different type of transport system to accommodate different type of amino acids. Amino acids with structural similarities end up competing to those to use these transporters. That's not a problem if your protein is coming from food, because it naturally contains a mix of amino acids. However, if you take high dose of amino acid supplements, those could theoretically interfere with absorption of other amino acids. Proteins that are not fully digested in the small intestine pass into the large intestine and are evenly excreted in the fecus. Recall from the last that plant-based proteins are a bit less digestible than animal proteins because some proteins are bound with the plant cell walls. Then this is the digestion and absorption of the proteins, and you can find here such type of question in various competitive exams. How the proteins are broken down, which is the first enzyme which starts the digestion of the proteins, and protein digesting enzymes, name of the protein digesting enzymes, how many enzymes are secreted into the stomach for the digestion of the proteins, how many enzymes are into the small intestine, why the absorption doesn't take place into the stomach, and what are the enzymes present into the saliva. Then what happens to the absorbed amino acid? Once the amino acid are in the food, blood, they are transported to the liver. As with other macronutrients, the liver is a checkpoint for amino acid distribution and any further breakdown of amino acids, which is very minimal. Dietary amino acids then become part of the body amino acid pools. The level of the amino acids remain constant into the body. Proteins, if there is more proteins, they are passed out from the body. So a pool is maintained. Assuming the body has enough glucose and other source of energy, those amino acids will be used in one of the following ways: protein synthesis in the cell around the body, making non-essential amino acid needed for protein synthesis, making other nitrogen containing compound, rearranged and stored as a fat. There is no storage form of the protein. Protein are never stored. Okay? In order to use amino acid to make ATP, glucose, fat, nitrogen first has to be removed in a process called deamination, which occurs in the liver and the kidney. Nitrogen is essentially released as ammonia, and because ammonia is toxic, then liver transforms it into urea. Urea is then transported to the kidney and excreted in the urine. Urea is a molecule that contains 2 nitrogen and is highly soluble in water. This makes it ideal for transport excess nitrogen out of the body, because amino acids are the building block that the body reserves the order in order to synthesize other proteins. More than 90% of the protein ingested does not get broken down further than the amino acid monomers. So this is all about the digestion and absorption of the proteins. Hope you understand the topic and you take the advantage into the various competitive exams as well as into the university exams of your course. I have already told you the questions what type of the questions have been come into the various competitive exams. Thank you.